discrete eye. It could be a deflection of interest where the most interest lies, and that is going after Iran, not Turkey. There is a possibility that Turkey and Israel will clash once they Israel from the east, Turkey from the north. Are they going to divvy up Syria? There's potential for clash there. But I think this is mostly smoke and mirrors, partly to deflect attention from what the neocons and Netanyahu really want to do, okay? Way back when the decision was to do Iraq first, so to speak, the expression was among the neocons, real men go to Tehran. Well, that hasn't changed. Why? Well, let's remind our readership or listenership or viewership here that the U.S. faces no threat from Iran, okay? Who threats? Well, the Israelis perceive that they are threatened by Iran. And as long as they continue their policy of genocide, they're threatened not only by Iran potentially, but by several other countries, not the least of which would be China and Russia, if it comes to that, okay? So my fear has been that during the next 10 days, the only days we have left, the Israelis go ahead with Blinken sort of, their lawyer saying, yeah, it's okay, go ahead, and strike Iran. And President Biden, there's a Freudian slip, isn't it? President Biden would be obliged to come right to Israel's aid and force the hand of his successor entering office with a live war going on, with most of Congress supportive of it, because they don't want Iran to succeed in threatening Israel. They don't know that this is all made up stuff, So anyhow, that's my concern. And is it, well, there's certain pieces of evidence that warrants that concern. We know that, what's his name? Jacob Jeremiah Sullivan, who goes by Jake Sullivan for obvious reasons, okay? That he's been talking about, well, maybe we ought to do Iran before we leave, and that was rejected, and then now it's up again for discussion. These leaks to the press, and so something's going on. Would Blinken and Sullivan be capable of this? I have to say yes. What are they incapable of? Now, do I think the chances are high? Well, with each day, it'll be 9 days tomorrow, 8 days. I think time is running out for them. But that's what I think. And I think Netanyahu might go ahead on his own, whether before or after the inauguration, to do this kind of thing. Now, he should feel deterred. Iran has hypersonic missiles. They've demonstrated that they can hit Israeli airfields, that they can hit deep inside Israel. The Houthis have missiles of equivalent quality. They can hit inside Israel. Does Iran have a nuclear weapon? No, it doesn't, okay? But it has something almost as good. So what I'd say on this, Iran, is watch. If Jake Sullivan says tomorrow at a press conference, we have found out that Iran is now working on a nuclear weapon. They're enriching uranium to the 90% purity, and they can do that in the next couple of days. We've found that out. Beware, okay? Caveat emptor. Watch out, because they lied before. Netanyahu has lied time and time again with maps and with graphics before the UN. The latest intelligence assessment, okay? This is important. Going back to 2007, when an honest estimate was made on Iran nuclear, they said all agencies unanimously, with high confidence, Iran stopped working on a nuclear weapon at the end of 2003. and had not resumed work on a nuclear weapon. That was stated as recently as February of last year. That briefing will be conducted again this year. It's the annual threat briefing. So we'll see what they say this year. But it's saving grace, the analysis part of the CIA. Its saving grace has been to help prevent a war against Iran planned by Bush and Cheney and Condoleezza Rice on their way out of office, namely, their last 2008, right? That put the national intelligence doesn't put the kibosh on those plans. And in his memoir, Decision Points, George W. Bush admits it. He says, this was a bummer. I didn't agree with this. For it deprived me of the military option. For how could I authorize an armed strike on the facilities of a country where our intelligence agency says they have no nuclear weapons program, end quote. Bummer. So what I'm saying is, watch out. Sullivan, Blinken, and I dare say, if William Burns is told to say this, he might say it. And surveillance is such that whistleblowers within the CIA or elsewhere are unlikely to face the rest of their life in jail by leaking what's happening. Look out for that. And the codicil here is that in those days, I said to myself, look, McGovern, LSD, coups, torture, I mean, should the CIA be abolished? And I said, wait a second now. You don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, okay? Bathwater is all these operations. The baby is the one that prevented a war in 2008 with Iran, okay? So let's not be rash, McGovern. Let's see if the analysis directorate can hold fast and do that kind of substantive analysis. Well, now I just don't know. We'll see what they say next February, that is next month, in their annual threat briefing. But whether they hold sway any longer with people like Bill Burns or with the incoming CIA director, we'll have to see. But I'm more on the fence now. I guess if you asked me right out, I would say, yeah, the CIA should be abolished in its present form. There should be an analysis intelligence unit set up somewhere so it can be independent and not subservient to state or to defense. And let the operation, if you have to have operations, if you want to have troops and stuff in 70 plus countries abroad, well, put that in the Pentagon where it belongs, for God's sake. If you want dirty tricks, do that in the Pentagon. So it doesn't adulterate those, doesn't color or fix the intelligence to suit the policy. So yeah, abolish them both. Start anew, and try to persuade enough Congress people that this is their patriotic duty to make sure that the country and its national security apparatus is set right once again, as it was, I'm proud to say, during John Kennedy and for the few years after that during which I served.
Ray, I don't know if you saw Donald Trump sharing a video of Jeffrey Sachs talking about Netanyahu being responsible for what has happened in the Middle East, in the West Asia. Let me play it for you. Then I want to know what's your take on and what is the main reason that Donald Trump shared this video.
Yeah. And you may actually hear from grown-up reporters who are lying through their teeth or ignorant beyond imagining that, oh, the war in Syria, yes, Russia intervened in Syria. Well, do you know that that Obama tasked the CIA to overthrow the Syrian government starting 4 years before Russia intervened? What kind of nonsense is that? And how many times did the New York Times report on Operation Timber Sycamore, which was the presidential order to the CIA to overthrow Bashar al-Assad? 3 times in 10 years. This is not democracy. This is a game. And it's a game of narrative. Why did the U.S. invade Iraq in 2003? Well, first of all, it was completely phony pretenses. It wasn't, oh, we were so wrong, they didn't have weapons of mass destruction. They actually did focus groups in the fall of 2002 to find out what would sell that war to the American people. Abe Schultzke, if you want to know the name of the PR genius. They did focus groups on the war. They wanted the war all the time. They had to figure out how to sell the war to the American people, how to scare the shit out of the American people. It was a phony war. Where did that war come from? You know what? It's quite surprising. That war came from Netanyahu, actually. You know that? It's weird. And the way it is that Netanyahu had from 1995 onward the theory that the only way we're going to get rid of Hamas and Hezbollah is by toppling the governments that support them. That's Iraq, Syria, and Iran. And the guy's nothing if not obsessive. And he's still trying to get us to fight Iran this day, this week. He's a deep, dark son of a bitch, sorry to tell you. Because he's gotten us into endless wars, and because of the power of all of this in the U.S. politics, he's gotten his way. But that war was totally phony. So what is this democracy versus dictatorship? Come on, these are not even sensible terms.
Your take, right?
Well, Jeff Sachs is the best. He's been there. He's been involved in so many things at the highest kind of level, and he knows so many people that the wonder here is that somebody tweeted this out. Now, unless somebody like Melania infiltrated Trump's Truth Social thing, if Trump approved this is very significant. I don't know if he would have, but let's assume he did. Oh my God, here's Sachs telling the truth. Now let's take Iraq. I know a lot about that. I had retired, but I saw my former colleagues bending to the Pentagon. Abe Schultzke, that he mentioned, who did he work for? Rumsfeld and Doug Feith, a Zionist working for Rumsfeld, okay? So my former colleagues at the CIA went along with this weapons of mass destruction myth, even though they knew from ScottRitter and from the testimony of Saddam Hussein's son-in-law, who was in charge of the nuclear, chemical, biological, and rocket program in Iraq, who said they were all destroyed at his command. Okay, they went along with Dick Cheney and so George Tenet and all those guys. Yeah, sure. Now, the real reason, as Jeff Sachs says, was Netanyahu. It was all the Israelis wanted us to do that. Now, after the invasion, despite everything that we knew about how it was manufactured and phony, as Jeff Sachs says, I was trying to figure. I had to do a lecture up in Anchorage, Alaska, of all places, and I needed to figure out, well, what am I going to say about why this happened? And I think, it's 3 things, and I coined an acronym. It was WMD, it was permanent military bases, and it was Israel. And I thought of those as pretty much all equally important. We coveted military bases in Iraq. That was clear from public statements. The WMD was doubtful. Some people didn't. Some people believed that, but Israel, I thought, was a factor. So when I testified before Representative John Conyers' committee, when it was learned that the intelligence had been adulterated to fit the policy, that was a document that was released. One of the they're all Democrat people who came to this this committee meeting. And one of them says, now, Mr. McGovern, all right, so it wasn't weapons of mass destruction, okay. And they're not going to get the permanent military bases. They even just call it now enduring military bases. But so what was it? Why did we go in? So I said, well, so I thought to myself, I'm on C-SPAN. I'm on CNN. McGovern, you're an intelligence officer. You tell the truth. So I said, the other main factor was Israel, of course. All the Democratic representatives sort of froze. And they were open-mouthed. They didn't know what to say. I said, yeah. If you look at who had free reign into the Pentagon, it was all these Israeli military generals and other, and the whole construct of this argument about weapons of mass destruction came largely from the Israelis. So yeah, it was clear that Israel played a major factor in this. Well, that changed the tone of the whole conversation. And I'm walking out from that meeting to cross the mall to do an interview with a NewsHour, PBS, not PBS, but PBS. And one of the Washington Post reporters trots out with me, and he says, now, Mr. McGovern, why are you so anti-Semitic? I said, what? I said, wait a minute. What are you accusing? I'm not accusing Israel. I'm saying the facts show that Israel was as a weighty factor. I now believe it was the most weighty factor, as Jeff Sachs says, okay? So then I go to NPR and I do my little thing. Well, 2 days later, I get an email from a friend of mine in Dallas who is second in command of the Democratic Party of Texas, okay? And she says, Ray, you won't believe it. Howard Dean is right here. And he's trying to raise some money. And so I said to him, I said, Howard, what do you think about that testimony before the Conyers Committee? And he turned on me and said, what? Oh, you mean that guy? That guy from the CIA? Well, yeah, he was former CIA, Ray McGovern. Yeah, that's his name. He caused me all kinds of problems. I had to interrupt dinner. I had to go back and big people were calling me, you know, big donors, big people. And they were saying, you gotta put out a statement disavowing what McGovern said. And so I spent the next hour, dealing with Foxman and all these other guys. They left this statement that McGovern, that what he said was anti-Semitic. And I told Conyers, you better tell that to the press too. Conyers did. And so he's out. So he tells my friend there in Dallas. So he caused me all kinds of grief. That you say he's a friend of yours? Yeah, he's a good friend of mine. Well, not a friend of mine. Okay. So now, okay, you got the picture? Now, it's not really comic relief, but I know Howard Dean. I watched little Howard Dean as a teenager try to learn how to play golf at a very exclusive club on the dunes of East Hampton, Long Island, right on the ocean there, when I was a caddy in high school and college, trying to earn enough for my tuition, okay? I caddied regularly for his father, okay? His father was a good guy, although part of the elite, of course. So I said to myself, oh, wait a second. Howard Dean, the Maidstone Club, a very exclusive club. And Nima, you're not from New York, but in New York, exclusive means no Jews, okay? At least in those days, okay? So here's Howard Dean, who can't take his Jewish wife to lunch at the Maidstone Club, calling me anti-Semitic. Now, luckily, I have a good little group of friends that advise me on things like this. Oh, I'm gonna get Howard Dean. I said, Ray, for God's sake, this is not about whether you're anti-Semitic or not. It's not about Howard Dean. Don't fall into that trap. So I never told that story until now. I did tell it one another time, I think. But isn't that symptomatic of what pressure these people feel under? I mean, it was It was visually, Israel, yeah, Israel. So let that be known. And if this is an indication that Trump is a smart enough guy to realize that Netanyahu can get him into one peck of trouble, well, that's a hopeful sign, isn't it? Let's see what happens.